Welcome to Infidelity Cheating Tales. Thanks for being here. Now, let's get into today's story. The first time I realized my marriage was already over, my wife wasn't in another man's arms. She was standing in my own kitchen, smiling at a text message she thought I'd never see. That smile wasn't meant for me, and somehow that hurt more than anything that happened afterward. My name is Mason Carter. I'm 39 years old, and I live just outside Charleston, South Carolina, in a neighborhood where everyone waves at each other, everyone knows your dog by name, and everyone believes they know your business. I own a residential restoration company that rebuilds homes after hurricanes, fires, and floods. My work has always been simple. When something falls apart, you rebuild it stronger than before. I believed marriages worked the same way. I was wrong. Rachel and I had been married for 11 years. No children, not because we didn't want them, but because life kept giving us another reason to wait. My company grew faster than either of us expected. She left her marketing job 3 years into our marriage to start an interior design studio. I paid the lease on her office, bought the furniture, introduced her to clients rebuilding expensive waterfront homes after storms. I never kept score because I honestly believed we were building one future together. For years, we were the couple people pointed at when they talked about stability. Friday dinners downtown, Sunday mornings on the boat, Christmas parties at our house. We weren't loud about our relationship, but we were solid. At least that's what I thought until one Tuesday afternoon changed everything. I had forgotten a folder containing insurance estimates at home. Rachel texted that she'd be working from the house all afternoon, so I drove back expecting to grab the file and leave within 2 minutes. My truck rolled quietly into the driveway just after 3. The garage door was open, but Rachel's SUV wasn't there. That seemed strange because she'd told me she wasn't leaving. As I stepped inside through the mudroom, I heard her voice. She was upstairs in our bedroom, laughing. Not the polite laugh she gave clients, not the comfortable laugh she shared with me. It was lighter, younger, almost flirtatious. I stopped halfway up the stairs without making a sound. "I know," she whispered between laughs. "He's completely focused on work. He barely notices when I'm gone." A man's voice answered through the speaker. "You sure he's never suspicious?" Rachel laughed again. "Mason, please, if I tell him I have a design consultation, he'd believe I was meeting the governor." Something inside me became strangely calm. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. It felt like someone had quietly turned off every emotion I owned. She continued. "Just give me another couple of weeks. He's about to close that Hilton renovation contract. Once that money comes in, everything becomes easier." The call ended. I quietly walked back downstairs before she could hear me. 5 minutes later, she came into the kitchen carrying her laptop. "Oh, you're home. Forgot a folder." She smiled naturally. "You scared me. Sorry." She walked over and kissed my cheek. "Working late?" "Probably. I'll order dinner." "Sounds good." The woman who had just discussed lying to me kissed me goodbye as if nothing had happened. I grabbed the folder, left the house, and didn't drive to work. Instead, I parked beneath a row of oak trees overlooking the marina 15 minutes away. For the next hour, I replayed every conversation we'd had during the past 6 months. Every canceled dinner, every unexpected business trip, every late client meeting. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they suddenly formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. The next morning, I hired someone. Not a private detective from television. A digital forensic consultant. Former cybercrime investigator. A man named Eric Holloway. I handed him exactly one instruction. "I don't want guesses. I want facts." He nodded once. "Give me 72 hours. Those were probably the longest 72 hours of my life. Rachel acted perfectly normal. She kissed me goodbye every morning, asked about work, sent me grocery lists, even reminded me to RSVP for our neighbor's anniversary party. If she felt guilty, she hid it better than anyone I'd ever met. Exactly 3 days later, Eric called. "Meet me." His office overlooked the Charleston River. No decorations, no unnecessary conversation. He placed a tablet on the desk between us. I recovered deleted cloud backups. He tapped the screen. A messaging app opened. Hundreds of conversations, photos, voice notes, hotel reservations. None of it was with a random stranger. The man's name was Daniel Mercer, 42, commercial real estate developer, married, 2 daughters. Someone I'd actually met twice at charity events. I kept scrolling. Weekend trips, luxury restaurants, private beach rentals. Then another folder appeared. One Rachel had deleted 2 months earlier. Its title made my stomach tighten. New Beginning. Inside weren't love letters. They were spreadsheets, property values, my business revenue, insurance settlements, retirement accounts, even estimated values of equipment owned by my company. What am I looking at? And I asked quietly. Eric didn't answer immediately. He enlarged one document. Across the top, someone had typed, "Post-divorce financial strategy." Rachel's comments filled the margins. Once Mason signs the expansion loan, liquidity will be much higher. Don't rush anything before the Hilton contract closes. The valuation needs to stay above $8 million. I stared at the screen without blinking. This wasn't just an affair. Someone had been planning the financial destruction of my entire life. Eric slowly folded his hands. Mason, I think your wife isn't preparing to leave you. He looked directly into my eyes before finishing the sentence. I think she's preparing to profit from you. Eric let the silence do its job. I kept staring at the tablet, hoping my brain would find a reasonable explanation hidden somewhere between the spreadsheets and hotel reservations. It never did. You said you wanted facts, Eric finally said. So here's another one. He opened a different folder. This wasn't created by your wife. The document header carried Daniel Mercer's company logo. There were meeting notes, projected cash flow, commercial property valuations. Then one page stopped me cold. Acquisition opportunities, Carter Restoration Services, my company, my business, my name. What the hell is this? Eric zoomed in. Several bullet points appeared. Owner emotionally vulnerable. Likely divorce within 90 days. Possible forced asset liquidation. Acquire equipment below market value through affiliated holding company. I leaned back slowly. My chest felt tight, but my mind had never been clearer. They're not just having an affair. Eric nodded. No. They've built a financial plan around your divorce. I didn't speak for almost a minute. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. Can you prove Rachel saw these documents? Eric tapped another message. Rachel had replied with a thumbs-up emoji, then another message. Just don't make any moves until Mason signs the Hilton contract. His company's value jumps after that. That was enough. I locked the tablet. Send me everything. I already encrypted 3 copies. Good. When I walked outside, Charleston felt strangely different. Same streets, same traffic, same afternoon sun. But none of it belonged to the life I'd left that morning. That evening, Rachel called while I was still sitting in my truck. Where are you? Office. You promised we'd have dinner together. I got tied up. She laughed softly. You work too much. The irony almost made me smile. I'll be late. No problem. I'll leave your plate in the oven. She sounded loving, comforting, exactly like a wife planning a future, except she was planning one without me. The next morning, I met Benjamin Cross, corporate attorney, 15 years of business litigation, one of the smartest men I'd ever hired. He spent nearly 2 hours reviewing every document. When he finally removed his glasses, his expression had completely changed. Mason, how bad? He folded his hands. If these files are authentic, they are? Then your wife has crossed far beyond adultery. He pointed toward one spreadsheet. She's participating in strategic financial planning designed to benefit from your divorce. Illegal? Potentially. What do? He smiled for the first time. We don't confront anyone. We let them continue believing they're ahead. That answer sounded exactly right. For the next 12 days, I became the best actor of my life. Rachel never suspected anything. We ate dinner together, attended a neighborhood barbecue, smiled for photographs, even toured a wedding venue with friends who had just gotten engaged. Every night she'd kiss me goodnight. Every morning she'd text little heart emojis. Meanwhile, Benjamin quietly rebuilt my financial world. Business assets were transferred into a protected holding structure. Expansion contracts were rewritten. Ownership rights were updated. Equipment leases were reassigned. Insurance settlements redirected. Every legal move was completely legitimate, completely documented, and completely invisible to Rachel. Exactly 2 weeks later, she came home unusually excited. You won't believe it. What? The Hilton renovation was approved. I pretended to smile. That's great. She wrapped her arms around me. I'm proud of you. I hugged her back. While she stood there, my attorney was finalizing paperwork that made almost every asset she'd been counting disappear from the divorce calculations. 3 days later, another surprise arrived. Rachel announced she wanted to celebrate. She reserved dinner at an expensive rooftop restaurant overlooking Charleston Harbor, sunset, champagne, live piano. It almost felt romantic. Almost. Halfway through dinner, she reached across the table and held my hand. Mason, I've been thinking. I looked at her. I don't think we're the same people anymore. There it was, the speech, carefully rehearsed, delivered with perfect sadness. I'll always care about you, she continued, but somewhere along the way, we became roommates. I nodded slowly. I've been feeling that too. Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected agreement. I think, she said carefully, maybe we should separate before we start resenting each other. I took a sip of coffee. I agree. Now she looked genuinely confused. You do? Yes. I think that's the healthiest decision. She blinked twice. Every emotion she'd prepared for, anger, begging, negotiation, none of them appeared. Instead, I calmly reached into my jacket, pulled out a small envelope, set it beside her wine glass. What's this? My gift. She slowly opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not divorce papers, a copy of one message she'd written to Daniel. Just wait until Mason signs everything. It'll all be worth it. The color disappeared from her face. She looked up. I quietly smiled for the first time in weeks. Don't worry, I said. I decided not to sign everything. Rachel stared at the page as if the words might rearrange themselves into something harmless. They didn't. Her fingers tightened around the paper until it crumpled slightly. For the first time in our entire marriage, she looked genuinely afraid. What is this? She asked quietly. You know exactly what it is. She looked around the restaurant before lowering her voice. You've been spying on me? No. I've been protecting myself. She swallowed. Mason, let me explain. I've read enough explanations. For nearly 30 seconds, neither of us spoke. The piano continued playing somewhere behind us, while waiters carried expensive dinners past a table where an 11-year marriage had quietly reached its end. Finally, Rachel leaned forward. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I know. It started as business. I almost laughed. Business? Daniel understood commercial development. He thought your company could grow faster if I disappeared? She immediately shook her head. No. If we divorced. There it is. She closed her eyes. You were never supposed to get hurt. I looked at her for a long moment. That's the strange thing about betrayal. It always hurts the person who's never invited into the conversation. Her phone buzzed. Daniel, his name lit the screen. She declined the call. A second later, it rang again, then again. I stood. You should answer. Mason, you've got plans to discuss. I placed enough cash on the table to cover dinner. Goodbye, Rachel. She reached for my arm. I stepped back before she could touch me. No, you don't get to hold my hand after trying to calculate what it's worth. I walked out without looking back. The next morning, Benjamin filed for divorce. Along with it came a civil claim requesting reimbursement for every dollar Rachel had secretly diverted while preparing her exit strategy. By lunchtime, her attorney had requested an emergency meeting. By evening, Daniel's attorney had done the same. Apparently, panic travels faster than confidence. 3 days later, we all met inside a downtown conference room. Rachel sat beside her lawyer. Daniel wore the same expensive confidence I'd seen in photographs. He smiled when I walked in. That smile disappeared within 15 minutes. Benjamin projected a timeline onto the screen. Every hotel reservation, every deleted message, every financial document, every property valuation, every email discussing my company's future after the divorce. Then he displayed the final document, the revised ownership structure of Carter Restoration Services, effective 3 weeks earlier. Daniel frowned. What is that? Benjamin smiled politely. Mr. Carter no longer personally owns the operating assets you intended to acquire. Silence. Rachel turned toward Daniel. What does that mean? He didn't answer. Benjamin continued. The equipment, contracts, commercial vehicles, intellectual property, and expansion agreements were legally transferred into a protected corporate structure before any divorce filing. Rachel looked back at me. No, I met her eyes. You wanted to wait until the Hilton contract closed. So did I. Daniel leaned forward. Then what exactly is left? Benjamin slid one final page across the table. The marital estate. Rachel picked it up, read the figures, read them again. This can't be right. It is. Most of what she'd expected simply wasn't part of the marital estate anymore because it had never been transferred illegally. It had been reorganized legally before the divorce, following months of corporate planning. She looked at me in disbelief. You knew. I did. For how long? The day I heard you laughing about me. She lowered her head. Daniel stood abruptly. This changes everything. Benjamin looked at him calmly. It certainly does. Within 48 hours, Daniel withdrew every personal communication with Rachel through his attorney. Within 2 weeks, his development company quietly removed him from several partnership negotiations after questions surfaced about internal communications connected to the acquisition plan. Nothing criminal was ever proven, but trust doesn't require a conviction to disappear. Rachel settled before the case reached trial. She repaid the money she'd transferred. The house was sold. The remaining assets were divided according to law. There was no dramatic courtroom speech, no screaming, just signatures, receipts, and silence. 8 months later, I expanded the business into Jacksonville. The Hilton project became one of the largest contracts our company had ever completed. We hired 23 new employees. Russell, my operations manager, liked reminding everyone that storms always created opportunity for people willing to rebuild. He wasn't just talking about houses. One Saturday morning, I stopped at a waterfront coffee shop before heading to a project site. Rachel was sitting alone outside. She looked older, not because of time, because regret ages people differently. She noticed me. Mason, I walked over. You look well. I've been trying. There was an awkward pause. I heard the company's doing great. It is, she nodded. I'm glad. For the first time since the divorce, there was no manipulation in her voice, just honesty. I thought Daniel loved me. She gave a small, tired smile. I guess he loved the version of me that was useful. I answered quietly. That's usually how people like him work. She looked toward the harbor. I traded certainty for excitement. And I didn't realize excitement expires. I stood there for a moment, then I smiled politely. I hope you find peace, Rachel. You don't hate me? I thought about the question before answering. Hate requires carrying someone with you. I finally learned how to travel lighter. I walked back to my truck. The phone rang before I reached the driver's door. Russell. Boss, we've got another waterfront contract. I smiled. I'll be there in 20. As I pulled onto the highway, the sun reflected across Charleston Harbor exactly the way it had the day my marriage ended. The water hadn't changed. The city hadn't changed. Only I had. Rachel thought she was planning a profitable ending. She never realized she was giving me the chance to build a better beginning. And this time, everything I built belonged to someone who finally